It was almost 8 o'clock, and they were both hurrying to Bakalaev's tenements in order to get there before Lutzin. "I say, who was that?" Razumikin asked, as soon as they were out in the street. "Oh, that was Svidrigailov, the landowner I told you about, in whose home my sister was ill-treated when she worked as a governess there. It was because of his amorous attentions that she had to give up that post. Marfa Petrovna turned her out. This Marfa Petrovna subsequently asked Dunya to forgive her, but now she suddenly died. She's the woman we were talking about earlier today. I don't know why, but that man really gives me the creeps. He's arrived in town having only just buried his wife. He's a very strange character, and has some sort of desperate plan. It's as if he knows something. Dunya must be protected from him. That's what I wanted to tell you. Are you listening?" "Protected? What can he possibly do to Avdotya Romanovna?" "Well, if you say so, Rodya. Thank you for keeping me informed. Yes, by all means, let's protect her. Where's he staying?" "Well, I don't know." "Why didn't you ask him? Damn, that's a pity. But don't worry, I'll find out." "Did you see him?" Raskolnikov asked after a short silence. "Oh, yes, I made a note of him. A firm mental note." "You're sure you saw him? Actually saw him?" Raskolnikov said insistently. "Yes, I'd remember him anywhere. I've got a good memory for faces." Again they said nothing for a while. Here we are then," Raskolnikov muttered. "But you know, at the time I thought, indeed I still do, that what I saw there might have been some kind of fantasy." "What on earth are you talking about? I don't think I quite understand." "Well," Raskolnikov went on, contorting his mouth into a smile, "you all say that I'm crazy, so just now I even thought it might be true, and I'd merely seen a ghost." "What?" "I mean, who knows? Perhaps I really am crazy, and all the things that have happened these last few days have simply been in my imagination." "Oh, Rodya, we've upset you again. But what was he saying? Why had he come to see you?" Raskolnikov made no reply. Razumikin thought for a moment. "Well, then, listen to what I've got to tell you," he began. "I came up to see you, but you were asleep. Then we ate dinner, and after that I went back to see Porfiry. Zamyotov was still with him. I started to try to talk to them, but I couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't communicate with them properly. It's as if they don't understand, and are incapable of understanding. Yet it doesn't seem to bother them one bit. I drew Porfiry over to the window and began to talk to him, but again I couldn't get anywhere. He kept looking away, and so did I. In the end I brought my fist up to his ugly mug and told him, as one relative to another, that I'd smash his skull. He just looked at me. I spat and went out, and that was it. Really silly. I didn't exchange a word with Zamyotov. But there's one thing you should note. I thought I'd gone and ruined everything. But as I was on my way down the staircase, a certain thought occurred to me, one that fairly made me think. What are we making all this fuss about? I mean, if you were in some danger, or something of that sort, I could understand it. But I mean, why should you worry? None of this has anything to do with you, so my advice is, spit on them. We'll laugh at them later on, when it's all over. But if I were in your shoes, I'd start mystifying them a bit too. I mean, how ashamed of themselves they'll be later on. Spit on them. Later on we'll give them a beating too. But in the meanwhile, let's just have a good laugh to ourselves." "Yes, it stands to reason," Raskolnikov answered. "But what will you be saying tomorrow?" he thought to himself. Strangely enough, he had not yet once been visited by the notion, what will Razumikin say when he finds out? With it now in his mind, Raskolnikov gave him a close look. The account Razumikin had just given him of his visit to Porfiry's had been of very little interest to him, so much water had flowed under the bridge since then. In the corridor they bumped into Lutzin. He had turned up punctually at 8 o'clock, and was now searching for the room, with the result that all three of them made their entrance together, but without looking at one another, and without saying hello. The young men went in ahead, while Pyotr Petrovitch, for the sake of common decency, hung around in the vestibule for a while, taking off his coat. Pulcheria Alexandrovna at once came out to greet him in the doorway. Dunya said hello to her brother. Pyotr Petrovitch came in and exchanged greetings with the ladies politely enough, though with redoubled sedateness. He looked, however, as though he had been slightly put off his guard, and had not yet quite recovered it. Pulcheria Alexandrovna, who also seemed rather shy, made haste to allot places to everyone at the round table, on which a samovar was bubbling. Dunya and Lutzin were given seats opposite each other on either side of the table. Razumikin and Raskolnikov ended up opposite Pulcheria Alexandrovna, Razumikin next to Lutzin, and Raskolnikov beside his sister. A momentary silence ensued. Pyotr Petrovitch unhurriedly took out a lawn handkerchief that smelt of scent, and blew his nose with the air of a man who, although virtuous, had none the less received a certain affront to his dignity, and was moreover firmly resolved to obtain an explanation. Out in the hallway he had wondered whether it might be better not to take his coat off at all, but to leave and go away, thereby visiting upon both ladies a severe and damning punishment, such as would instantly make them aware of the whole depth of his feelings. This, however, he did not quite dare to do. What was more, this was a man who could not abide uncertainty. If his instructions had so flagrantly been violated, that means something must be going on, and whatever it was, he had better find out before it led anywhere. There would, after all, be plenty of time for punishments later on, and it lay in his power to administer them. "Your journey was satisfactory, I trust?" he said, addressing Pulcheria Alexandrovna in an official-sounding tone. "Yes, Pyotr Petrovitch, thanks be to God." "I am unconscionably pleased to hear it, madam. I trust Avdotya Romanovna did not find it too tiring either?" "Oh, I'm young and strong, but mother had a dreadful time," Dunya answered. "What is one to do, madam? Our national railroads are unconscionably long. The so-called Mother Russia is great in more senses than one. I am afraid that, all my wishes to the contrary, I was totally unable to be at the station to meet you yesterday. I trust, however, that everything went off without too much bother." "Well, as a matter of fact, Pyotr Petrovitch, we were very dismayed," Pulcheria Alexandrovna said quickly, in a peculiar tone of voice, "and if God himself had not sent us Dmitri Prokofitch yesterday, we would quite simply have been lost. Here he is, Dmitri Prokofitch Razumikin," she added, introducing him to Lutzin. "Ah, yes, I had the pleasure yesterday," Lutzin muttered. He gave Razumikin a hostile, sideways look, then frowned and fell silent. On the whole, Pyotr Petrovitch belonged to that category of men who, when observed in society, appear extremely amiable and make a special virtue of their amiability, but who, as soon as anything is not quite to their liking, at once lose all their inner resources and become more reminiscent of sacks of flour than easy-going cavaliers whose task is to enliven the company. Again they all fell silent. Raskolnikov kept resolutely taciturn. Avdotya Romanovna did not want to break the silence prematurely. Razumikin could think of nothing to say, with the result that Pulcheria Alexandrovna flew into another flap. "Marfa Petrovna died, I expect you've heard," she began, resorting to her capital fund of conversational material. "Indeed, madam, I have. I was informed at the first rumour thereof, and have in fact come here now in order to tell you that immediately after his wife's funeral, Arkady Ivanovitch Svidrigailov set off in a hurry for St. Petersburg. Such, at any rate, would appear to be the case, according to the most precise information I have been able to obtain." "To St. Petersburg? Here, you mean?" Dunya asked anxiously, exchanging a glance with her mother. "Precisely so, madam, and needless to say, not without certain ulterior motives, if the speed of his departure and the nature of the preceding circumstances are anything to go by." "Oh, good Lord, will you really not leave Dunya in peace even here?" Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. "I do not believe that either of you or Avdotya Romanovna need have any particular concern, assuming, of course, that you wish to have nothing whatever to do with him. As for myself, I am even now investigating the whereabouts of the address at which he is residing." "Oh, Pyotr Petrovitch, you have no idea how you frightened me just now," Pulcheria Alexandrovna went on. "I've only ever seen him twice, and I thought he was horrible, horrible. I'm convinced he was responsible for Marfa Petrovna's death." "With regard to that, one must not jump to conclusions. I have precise information. I will not dispute that he may have contributed to the accelerated tempo of events by the, as it were, psychological influence of the outrage he perpetrated on her. But as for the conduct and the general moral characteristics of the person concerned, I am in agreement with you. I do not know whether he is rich now, or what exactly Marfa Petrovna may have left him. I shall have information concerning this in the very nearest future, if I know anything of the man. However, being possessed of even a few financial resources, he will at once, here in St. Petersburg, revert to his old customs. He is one of the most depraved and lost examples of all that category of men. I have considerable grounds for supposing that Marfa Petrovna, having had the misfortune 8 years ago to fall in love with him and redeem his debts, performed a service to him in another respect too. It was exclusively thanks to her efforts and sacrifices that a criminal charge, which involved more than a dash of bestial, nay, fantastic murderousness, was nipped in the bud at the very outset, a charge which, had he had to answer it in court, could most easily have landed him in Siberia. That is the kind of man he is, if you wish to know." "Oh, good Lord!" Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. Raskolnikov was listening intently. "And you're not making it up when you say you have precise information about this?" Dunya asked, sternly and imposingly. "All I can tell you is what I have heard myself, in confidence, from the deceased Marfa Petrovna. It's worth observing that from a legal point of view this case was somewhat unsubstantiated. There lived, and indeed still lives, in this part of town, a certain foreign woman by the name of Resslich, who is, moreover, a small-time money-lender, and also undertakes certain other kinds of business. Mr. Svidrigailov had for a long time maintained certain close and mysterious contacts with this Resslich woman. She had a distant relative, a niece, I think it was, living with her. This was a girl of about 15, or possibly even only 14, a deaf mute, and the Resslich woman had a boundless hatred for her and grudged her every bite. She even used to beat her in a quite inhuman fashion. One day the girl was found hanging in the attic. Her death was adjudged to be suicide. After the usual legal proceedings, the matter was dropped, but later on someone made a statement to the police that the child had been brutally raped by Svidrigailov. True, all this is unsubstantiated. The information came from another German woman, a prostitute whose testimony could not be relied on. In the end, there was not even an official statement, thanks to the efforts and financial resources of Marfa Petrovna. It all remained a rumour. On the other hand, it is a rumour that tells us a great deal. Avdotya Romanovna, I am sure that during the time you spent in their house you also heard about what happened to their manservant Philip, who some 6 years ago died of the tortures that were inflicted on him back in the days of serfdom. Oh, but what I heard was that Philip hanged himself. Precisely so, madam, but it was a system of incessant victimizations and punishments devised and put into execution by Mr. Svidrigailov that compelled, or rather predisposed him to seek a violent death at his own hand. I don't know anything about that, Dunya replied coldly. All I heard was a very strange story to the effect that Philip was a hypochondriac, a kind of domestic philosopher of whom the servants used to say that he'd read too much, and that he'd hanged himself more because of the taunts of Mr. Svidrigailov than because of his beatings. During my time there, he treated the servants well, and one could even have said that they liked him, though it's true that they also blamed him for Philip's death. I observe, Avdotya Romanovna, that you seem suddenly to have developed an inclination to defend him, Lützin remarked, contorting his mouth into an ambiguous smile. Indeed, he is a man of cunning and seductive charm, where ladies are concerned, as witness the deplorable example of Marfa Petrovna, who died so strangely. I simply wish to serve your mother and yourself with my advice, in view of his renewed and doubtless impending efforts. As for myself, I am firmly convinced that this man is going to disappear into a debtor's prison again. Marfa Petrovna certainly never had any intention of allotting any substantial sum to him, with his children in mind, and if she did leave him something, then it was only that which was most essential, of little value and ephemeral duration, and which would not last a man of his habits even a year. Pyotr Petrovitch, please, I beg of you, do let us stop talking about Mr. Svidrigailov. It's making me feel depressed. He came to see me just now, Raskolnikov said suddenly, for the first time breaking the silence. There were gasps all around. Everyone turned to look at him. Even Pyotr Petrovitch looked worried. About an hour and a half ago, while I was asleep, he came in, woke me up, and introduced himself, Raskolnikov continued. He was rather jovial and relaxed, and seemed fully to expect that I'll strike up some sort of friendship with him. By the way, Dunya, he seems to be absolutely desperate to have a meeting with you, and he asked me to arrange it. He has a proposition to make to you, and he told me what it was. Moreover, he informed me quite definitely that a week before her death, Marfa Petrovna left you 3,000 roubles in her will, and you may receive this money in the very nearest future. Thank God! Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed, crossing herself. Pray for her, Dunya, pray for her. It is indeed true, broke from Lützin. Yes, yes. What else did he say? Dunya said, hurrying her brother. Then he said that he himself was not a rich man, and that the whole of the estate was to go to his children, who are at present living with an aunt. Then he told me he was staying somewhere not far from me, but as to exactly where it is I don't know. I didn't ask. But what is it? What is this proposition he wants to make to Dunya? Pulcheria Alexandrovna asked in fear. Did he tell you? Yes, he did. Tell us then. I'll tell you later. Raskolnikov fell silent and addressed himself to his tea. Pyotr Petrovitch took out his watch and glanced at it. There is some business I must attend to, and so I shall not intrude any longer, he added, with a slight air of pique, and began to get up from his seat. Oh, don't go, Pyotr Petrovitch, Dunya said. After all, you intended to come for the whole evening. What's more, in your letter you said there was something you wanted to discuss with Mother. Precisely so, Avdotya Romanovna, Pyotr Petrovitch said, imposingly, sitting down on his chair again, but still with his hat in his hands. I did indeed wish to discuss some most important points with both of you and your mother. But just as there are certain proposals of Mr. Svidrigailov which your brother appears unable to talk about in my presence, so there are certain most important matters I, too, do not wish to discuss in the presence of others. What is more, my fundamental and most urgent request has not been obeyed. Lützin made a sour face and lapsed into sedate silence. Your request that my brother not be present at our meeting was disregarded at my insistence, said Dunya. You wrote in your letter that you had received an insult from him. I think that ought to be cleared up at once, and the two of you ought to settle your differences. And if Roger really did insult you, then he must and will apologize to you. Pyotr Petrovitch at once began to bully. There are certain insults, Avdotya Romanovna, which with all the goodwill in the world it is impossible to forget. There are certain limits beyond which it is inadvisable to go, as once having crossed them, there may be no going back. That's not really what I was talking about, Pyotr Petrovitch, Dunya broke in with some impatience. What you must understand is that the whole of our future now hangs on the question of whether all this can be cleared up and settled, and as soon as possible. I will tell you right now that I cannot view the matter in any other light, and that if you value me at all, then, even though it may be hard, all this nonsense must end today. I repeat, if my brother has wronged you, he will ask your forgiveness. It surprises me that you should put the matter in those terms, Avdotya Romanovna, Luzin said, getting more and more irritated. While I think highly of you, and as it were, adore you, at the same time I think I should make it perfectly plain that there may very well be a member of your family for whom I have not the slightest affection. In proffering my claim to the favour of your hand, I cannot at the same time assume obligations which may be incompatible. Oh, stop being so touchy, Pyotr Petrovitch, Dunya interrupted with feeling. Please try to behave like the intelligent and noble-spirited man I have always considered you, and should like to go on considering you. I have given you the great promise. I am your betrothed. Please trust me, and have confidence in my power of dispassionate judgment in this matter. My taking upon myself the role of a judge is as much of a surprise to my brother as it is to you. When after receiving your letter today I asked him to be present at our meeting, I told him nothing of my intentions. It's like this, you see. If the two of you don't settle your differences, I shall have to choose either you or him. That is how matters stand with regard to you both. I don't want to make the wrong choice. If I choose you, then I must break with my brother. If I choose my brother, I must break with you. Now I want to discover beyond any shadow of doubt whether he is a true brother to me or not. And as for you, I want to find out whether you value me, think highly of me, whether you will be a true husband to me. Avdotya Romanovna, Luzin said, wincing, your words are all too clear to me, and I must say I find them positively offensive, bearing in mind the position I have the honour to hold in your regard. Quite apart from the strange and offensive comparison you've made, setting me on a par with an arrogant youth, you imply by your remarks the possibility of breaking the promise you gave me. Either you or him, you say, thereby demonstrating to me how little I mean to you. I find this more than I can tolerate, in view of the relations and commitments that exist between us. What? Dunya exclaimed, blazing up. I put your interests on the same level as all that has hitherto been precious to me in life. That has constituted the integrity of my life, and you suddenly take offence because you think I value you too little? Raskolnikov smiled a silent, caustic smile, and Razumikin was seized with inward mirth. But Pyotr Petrovitch did not accept Dunya's reply. On the contrary, with every word she spoke, he was growing more and more quarrelsome and irritable, as though he were acquiring a taste for it. The love you feel for your future companion in life, for your husband, must come before your love for your brother, he pronounced sententiously. But however that may be, it is out of the question for me to be placed on an equal level with him, even though I insisted earlier that I would not and could not explain in the presence of your brother the reasons for my coming here. I now intend to address your esteemed mother in respect of a certain salient point that affects my honour. Your son, he said, turning to Pulcheria Alexandrovna, yesterday, in the presence of Mr. Razudkin, that's right, isn't it? I'm sorry, your name slipped my memory, he said, bowing amiably to Razumikin, insulted me by misrepresenting a remark I made to you in the course of a private conversation as we were having coffee together one day, namely, that there is more conjugal advantage to be obtained from marrying a girl from a poor family, who has already experienced some of life's woes, than there is in marrying one from a well-off background, because the former will be more likely to behave in a moral fashion. Your son deliberately exaggerated the import of my words to the point of absurdity, accusing me of evil intentions, and, in my opinion, founded his attack on material drawn from your own correspondence with him. I shall consider myself fortunate, Pulcheria Alexandrovna, if you can succeed in assuring me that the contrary is the case, thus doing much to set my mind at rest. Will you be so good as to tell me in exactly what terms you conveyed my words in your letter to Rodion Romanovitch? I don't remember, Pulcheria Alexandrovna said, getting confused. I conveyed them in the sense in which I understood them. I don't know what Rodya told you. Perhaps he did exaggerate. He could not have done so without your influence. Pyotr Petrovitch, Pulcheria Alexandrovna said with dignity, the proof that Dunya and I did not take your words in too negative a sense is that we are here. Bravo, mother, Dunya said approvingly. So I'm to blame there too, am I? Lutzin said in an offended tone. Look, Pyotr Petrovitch, you're forever blaming Rodion, but you yourself said something that wasn't true about him in that letter you wrote, Pulcheria Alexandrovna added, gaining some courage. I do not recall having written anything untrue, madam. What you wrote in your letter, Raskolnikov said abruptly, without turning to face Lutzin, was that I gave that money yesterday not to the widow of the man who'd been trampled to death, as was actually the case, but to his daughter, whom I hadn't ever met until yesterday. You wrote that in order to stir up unpleasantness between me and my family, and to that purpose you added some filthy remarks about the behaviour of a girl you don't even know. It's all base lies and slander. Pardon me, sir, Lutzin replied, quivering with vindictive rage. In my letter I expatiated on your qualities and actions solely in response to the request of your mother and sister that I describe them, as they wished to know in what state I had found you, and what sort of impression you had made on me. As for the comments you refer to, I defy you to quote one line of them that is not true. In other words, prove to me that you were not wasting your money, and that family, though unfortunate, did not contain unworthy persons. Well, if you want my opinion, you, with all your attributes of worthiness, are not worth the little finger of the unhappy girl at whom you cast your stone. So you would allow her into the company of your mother and sister, would you? I've already done it, if you really want to know. I made her sit down with mother and Dunya when she came to visit me today. Rodya! Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed, and Dunya blushed. Razumikin knit his eyebrows. Lutzin gave a superior, caustic smile. I think you may judge for yourself, Avdotya Romanovna, he said. What agreement is possible here? I hope that this matter is now concluded and fully explained once and for all. Now, however, I shall betake myself elsewhere in order not to disturb the continued pleasantness of this family reunion and the divulging of confidences. He rose from his chair and picked up his hat. As I leave, however, I venture to suggest that in future I be spared such meetings and, as it were, compromising situations. I address a particular request to you in this regard, my dear Pulcheria Alexandrovna, all the more so since my letter was addressed to yourself and not to anyone else. Pulcheria Alexandrovna was somewhat offended. Anyone might think you were trying to take us completely in your power, Pyotr Petrovitch. Dunya has told you the reason for your request not being obeyed. She acted with the best intentions. You know your letter to me reads as though you were giving me orders. Are we really to consider your every request a command? I, for my part, would like to say to you that you ought to be extremely tactful and considerate to us now, because we've given up everything, and trusting you, have come here, practically in your power already, just for having done that." "That's not entirely just, Pulcheria Alexandrovna, especially not at the present moment, when tidings have arrived concerning the 3,000 roubles bequeathed by Marfa Petrovna. Tidings most opportune, it would appear, given the new tone in which you have begun to address me," he added bitingly. "If that remark's anything to go by, one can really only suppose that you've been calculating on our helplessness," Dunya observed in irritation. "Well, now, at any rate, I can make no such calculations, and I am particularly anxious not to impede the divulging of the confidential proposals emanating from the person of Arkady Ivanovitch Svidrigailov, proposal he's entrusted to your brother, and which, I see, may be of fundamental and possibly agreeable significance to you." "Oh, good heavens!" Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. Razumikin could not keep still on his chair. "Don't you feel ashamed now, sister?" Raskolnikov asked. "Yes, I do, Rodya," Dunya said. "Pyotr Petrovitch—" "Get out of here," she said to him, pale with anger. Pyotr Petrovitch, it seemed, had not at all expected such an ending of the scene. He had too much self-confidence, too much belief in his own power, and in the helplessness of his victims. Even now he could not quite believe it. He turned pale, and his lips began to quiver. "Avdotya Romanovna, if I go out of that door now, parting with words like those, then of this you may be certain, I shall never return. Think about it carefully. My word is my bond." "What effrontery!" Dunya exclaimed, getting up quickly. "Why, I don't want you to return." "What? So that's it?" Lutzin shouted, right up to the last moment, unable to believe in the possibility of such a denouement, and therefore now totally at a loss. "So that's it? But you know, Avdotya Romanovna, I may fight this in court." "What right do you have to speak to her like that?" Pulcheria Alexandrovna said, heatedly intervening. "What case can you possibly have against her, and what rights do you have anyway? Do you think I'd give my Dunya to a man like you? Go away, leave us alone. We ourselves are to blame for having agreed to a bad arrangement, and I am the one who bears the most guilt." "You don't say, Pulcheria Alexandrovna!" Lutzin cried, in a rabid turmoil of fury. "But you know you have bound me by your word, which you are now breaking. And what is more, I have, as it were, been involved in certain expenses." This final complaint was so characteristic of Pyotr Petrovitch that Raskolnikov, pale with anger and the effort of repressing it, suddenly could contain himself no longer and burst out laughing. Pulcheria Alexandrovna, however, lost her temper entirely. "Expenses? What expenses? I suppose you mean our trunk, but you know very well that the guard took it on the train for nothing. Good Lord, you say we've bound you. I think you ought to bear in mind, Pyotr Petrovitch, that it's you who've bound us hand and foot, not the other way round." "That's enough, mother. Please, that's enough," Avdotya Romanovna implored her. "Pyotr Petrovitch, be so kind as to leave." "Very well, madam. But one last word before I do," he said, no longer quite in control of himself. "Your mother would appear to have completely forgotten that I ventured to take you, as it were, in the face of the rumours that were being passed around town and had spread over the entire neighbourhood concerning your reputation. By thus spurning public opinion for your sake, and by re-establishing your good name, I believe I might most possibly be within my rights in expecting something in return from you, and even in demanding your gratitude. Only now my eyes have been opened, I myself see that I may have acted most unwisely in neglecting the public voice." "Does he want his head broken, or what?" Razumikin shouted, leaping up from his chair and already preparing to administer retribution. "You're a base and wicked man," said Dunya. "That'll do now. No more gestures," Raskolnikov exclaimed, holding Razumikin back. Then he went right up to Lutzin, so their faces almost touched. "Be so good as to get out of here," he said, quietly and distinctly. "And not another word. Otherwise—" For a few seconds Lutin stared at him with features that were pale and twisted with hostile rage. Then he turned and went out. And it is possible that no man ever bore within his heart so much violent hatred for another human being as this man did for Raskolnikov. It was Raskolnikov, and Raskolnikov alone, whom he blamed for everything. It is worth noting that even as he made his way downstairs, he still fancied that his cause might not yet be entirely lost, and that in the case of the ladies, at least, might most possibly be capable of rectification.